Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we get you the top stories from the world that matter to you. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Alison LaGrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Tehran and Moscow ink a $25 billion agreement to build 4 advanced third-generation nuclear power plants in southern Iran, as the two countries deepen their cooperation amid U.S. sanctions. Turkish Airlines signs a record deal with American aircraft manufacturer Boeing for 225 planes. This comes a day after talks between Turkish President Erdogan and U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington. The Abu Dhabi royal family will take a stake in TikTok's U.S. business after President Donald Trump signed an executive order brokering a deal valuing the social media company at $14 billion. A Berlin court evicts the far-right Alternative for Germany party from its national headquarters after a dispute with the owner, who accused the AfD of a rental contract breach during an election night celebration. And India bids farewell to its Air Force warhorse, the MiG-21 fighter jets. Over 6 decades later, the Soviet-era jets were the heroes of 4 of India's armed conflicts with Pakistan. Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story. Today we begin with the latest updates on U.S. President Donald Trump's trade policy. He has announced tariffs of up to 100% on imports of branded and patented pharmaceutical drugs. Now, these new duties will come into effect on the 1st of October. Trump took to his social media platform, Truth Social, to make the announcement, adding that only drugs manufactured in American plants would be spared. Now, the U.S. president did not provide a legal justification for his latest tariffs, but said that they were needed for national security and for other reasons. Now, Trump's tariffs target pharmaceutical imports from all over the world, but it may impact Indian companies the most. This is because the U.S. is India's largest export market for pharma products. Big Indian pharma giants reportedly earn 30 to 50% of their total revenues from the American market. The Indian government said it is closely monitoring and studying the impact of this decision.
शायद कल जो एक नोटिस आया था सोशल मीडिया पोस्ट पे हम लोगों ने देखा है कि नई टैरिफ की बात हो रही है फार्मा पे और भी अन्य कुछ पदार्थ पे, तो इस रिपोर्ट को हम लोगों ने देखा है और हमारे यहाँ जो मंत्रालय जो विभाग इससे संबंधित है वो इस मामले पे नज़र रखे हैं और उस पर देख रहे हैं कि क्या उस पर असर पड़ता है.
Now, last year, India's pharma exports stood at nearly $28 billion. Out of this, 31% of the products were exported to the U.S. And this year, Indian pharma products worth $3.7 billion have already been exported to the U.S. Now, Trump's latest tariffs appear to target branded and patented drugs. This sector is mainly dominated by multinational giants. India reportedly supplies over 45% of generic and 15% of biosimilar drugs used in the United States. American consumers depend on these low-cost Indian generics, but there is uncertainty over the taxes that the complex generic and specialty medicines will face. Now, Trump's latest duties followed already levied tariffs on Indian imports. India faces a 50% import duty. Now, this includes a 25% tax imposed as a penalty for the purchase of Russian oil and is aimed at pressuring Russia through its trade partners amid its war with Ukraine. Now, Trump's latest decision triggered a sharp drop in pharma shares. Market analysts say that these tariffs could increase drug prices in the US, and they have also warned of a potential supply disruption until the domestic production capacity is built. And in addition to the taxes on medicines, Trump has also announced a 50% duty on imports of kitchen cabinets and bathroom vanities, while imports of upholstered furniture are slapped with a 30% tariff and 25% is levied on heavy truck imports. The latest duties followed a tax framework imposed last month. The taxes on imports varied from nation to nation, with India facing the highest tariffs. The Trump administration said that it levied these duties to balance the budget deficit and to increase domestic manufacturing. Now let's shift our focus to the two warring neighbors, Russia and Ukraine, where a raging battle has forced Moscow to extend its fuel export ban until the end of the year. The announcement followed continued Ukrainian attacks on Russian energy infrastructure. Now, Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak has announced the embargo on Thursday, and according to the Russian state media, Novak also admitted a shortage of petroleum products, adding that it was being covered by accumulated reserves. This as gas pumps across Russia are reportedly running dry. This due to the intensified Ukrainian strikes on Russian energy infrastructure aimed at cutting the revenues and disrupting the fuel supply chain in the summer. Now, this is the time when fuel consumption by Russia's drivers and farmers is at its peak. Earlier this week, the Ukrainian Air Force claimed an attack on one of Russia's largest petrochemical complexes in the southern Bashkortostan region. The strikes reportedly triggered a fire at the site that is operated by Gazprom. Russia has long tried to downplay the fuel shortages. The officials initially blamed it on logistical reasons and promised to reinforce supplies. But the crisis has only worsened with time, and it has reached a point where gas stations in several regions have reportedly started rationing gasoline and diesel, allowing customers to buy only a limited amount. The Russian annexed region of Crimea is the worst hit. Reports suggest that half of the pumps in the region are not operational. Crimea's Russia-appointed governor blamed reduced production at oil refineries for the shortage. The reports even suggest that Crimea's largest city, Sevastopol, was completely out of gasoline. Now, according to the Ukrainian military, its long-range attacks this year have caused $74 billion in damages to Russia. These figures cannot be verified, but there are plenty of videos showing evident destruction at Russian energy sites. And if the Ukrainian intelligence services are to be believed, then these attacks have pushed Russian companies to purchase petroleum from Belarus to address the domestic shortages. Now, the latest ban on fuel exports is an attempt to deal with these shortages. Earlier in March, Moscow barred some exports of gasoline. Then it extended the ban to all major producers in July. Now, Russia is among the world's biggest producers of diesel fuel. Its exports are a key source of revenue for the government. But the Ukraine war and sanctions from the West have dented Russia's revenue. Even as Russian forces make advances on the ground, Ukraine is trying to redirect the battle through its long-range air attacks. As the war between Russia and Ukraine continues to rage, following US President Donald Trump's failed efforts to broker a truce. Now, from the war in Ukraine to the conflict in West Asia, US President Donald Trump has vowed to stop Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from annexing the West Bank, which far-right politicians in Israel see as a way to kill any real prospect of an independent Palestine. The US president also voiced optimism about ending nearly 2 years of devastating war in Gaza by saying that he spoke to Netanyahu and that the two were getting close to a deal on Gaza and may even be peace. Now, Trump's statement came ahead of Netanyahu's address at the United Nations General Assembly and also before his meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister.
I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. No, I will not allow it. It's not going to happen.
Did you speak with Netanyahu about this directly?
Yeah, but I'm not going to allow it. Whether I spoke to him or not, I did. But I'm not allowing Israel to annex the West Bank. There's been enough. It's time to stop now. We have great relationships with a lot of countries. And you may be even more happy when you find out, because we spoke with Bibi Netanyahu today, and we spoke to all the leaders in the Middle East, who are great people, and we're getting pretty close to having a deal on Gaza, and maybe even peace, which would be the first time in about, 2,000 years, I think? In the region, I'd say the first in, Steve, what would you say, first in 2,000 years, or maybe 1,000?
2 millennium.
Netanyahu's ministers and allies have reportedly been discussing plans to annex the West Bank in response to recognition of a Palestinian state by France, Britain, Portugal, and several other Western powers. Now, this prompted alarm among leaders of the Arab world, some of whom met with Donald Trump earlier this week on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. During the meeting, while Trump presented a 21-point peace plan for West Asia and Gaza, leaders of the key Arab and Muslim nations warned the U.S. of consequences if Israel moved ahead with the West Bank annexation plan.
Had some very, really good talks today on Gaza with both the Middle East representatives and kings and all of the top leaders in the Middle East. And we had also a very good conversation with Bibi Netanyahu, trying to get the hostages back, and we're trying to get the end of the Gaza situation. It's really bad, very bad. And we think it could happen. Maybe it could happen pretty soon. We want the hostages back. We want the bodies back. And we want to have peace in that region. So we had some very good talks.
So what I can say about the meeting with President Trump, which I think was a very important meeting, is that the Arab and Muslim countries made very clear to the president the danger of annexation of any type in the West Bank, and the risk that poses not just to the potential of peace in Gaza, but also to any sustainable peace at all. And I feel confident that President Trump understood the position of the Arab and Muslim countries, and I think the president in the US understands very well the risks and dangers of annexation in the West Bank.
Now, Trump's latest remarks signal an alignment with both Arab and Western nations. Earlier, French President Emmanuel Macron had said that the annexation of the West Bank would be a red line and would mark the end of the Abraham Accords. Macron added that the Europeans and Americans were on the same page on this topic. Now, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas also pledged to work with the US, Saudi Arabia, France, and the UN on a peace plan for Gaza. Earlier this month, the 193-member UN General Assembly overwhelmingly endorsed a 7-page declaration that aims to advance a two-state solution for Israel and the Palestinians and to end the war in Gaza.
We declare our readiness to work with President Donald Trump, with Saudi Arabia, France, the United Nations, and all partners to implement the peace plan adopted at the September 22nd conference, paving the way to a just peace and comprehensive regional cooperation. We affirm that Gaza is an integral part of the state of Palestine, and that we are ready to assume full responsibility for governance and security there. Hamas will have no role in governance, and, along with other factions, must hand over weapons to the Palestinian National Authority within the framework of building the institutions of one state, one law, and one legitimate security force. We reiterate that we do not want an armed state.
The United States, however, is currently opposed to recognizing Palestine, saying such a move is a reward for Hamas. Now, earlier this month, Netanyahu signed a controversial West Bank settlement expansion plan, including E1, which is a project to build thousands of new homes that would cut the West Bank into two. The E1 plan had been frozen for decades due to international opposition, since it would cut off the West Bank from East Jerusalem. Israeli settlements have grown in size and numbers since Israel captured the West Bank in the 1967 war. Around 700,000 Israeli settlers live among 2.7 million Palestinians in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, which Israel annexed in a move not recognized by most countries. Now, Israel refuses to cede control of the West Bank and has reinforced its position since the October 7, 2023 attack by Hamas. Now, Israel has been under mounting global pressure. Despite this, Netanyahu seems to have defied Donald Trump in recent weeks, with attacks in Iran, Qatar and Syria amid ongoing U.S. diplomacy. For now, Netanyahu has not revealed what he intends to do. He says that his response would come once he returns to Israel after meeting with Donald Trump in New York. Now, a nation reeling from a monster typhoon has been struck again. Typhoon Bualoi, which slammed into the eastern Philippines overnight, has weakened into a severe tropical storm, but it continues to tear through island communities, destroying homes, flooding streets, and forcing the evacuation of hundreds of thousands. Officials confirmed at least 3 deaths. More than 400,000 people were evacuated from the flood and landslide-prone villages. Bualoi is the second strike in what has become a devastating 1-2 blow from the Pacific. In Manila, as a precaution, residents moved into evacuation centers.
We live just by the corner of the river and it would be difficult when the water rises. When the flood surges, the floodwaters reach up to the 3rd floor of our homes and we would not be able to leave. I have 3 children and I don't want anything to happen to them. It's better to be ready and safe.
In Masbate City, power lines lay tangled in the streets. Houses stood roofless and debris piled high. Videos circulating online showed residents trudging through waist-deep water, while others used boats to navigate submerged neighborhoods. In one church, there were evacuees who had taken shelter, and the storm ripped off the roof, hurling debris across pews. And residents say it was one of the strongest winds they had ever experienced, and several children were injured. Just before this, Super Typhoon Ragasa, one of the strongest storms of this year, carved a deadly path across Asia. Ragasa, which peaked with winds of 265 kilometers per hour, left at least 25 people dead in the northern Philippines and Taiwan, mostly from drowning.
My older sister is inside, so she was inside when it happened. And when the water receded, my sister didn't try to leave until the water reached her waist. So she died in the house because it was completely filled with mud and there was no way to get her out. We even called the police, but when by the time they arrived, everything completely flooded again, and there was no way to get her out.
It forced the evacuation of millions, shuttered airports and businesses across southeastern China and Hong Kong, and then weakened as it scraped across Vietnam. In Vietnam, though downgraded to a tropical depression, Ragasa continues to dump heavy rain, with officials warning of flash floods and landslides. Vietnamese Prime Minister has ordered the protection of hospitals, dams and fishing vessels, while flights were cancelled and workers trimmed trees to reduce hazards. The back-to-back storms highlight Asia's extraordinary vulnerability to climate-fueled disasters. The Philippines alone is hit by an average of 20 typhoons each year, and scientists warn that warming oceans are feeding storms that are not only stronger, but increasingly catastrophic. For millions from Luzon to Guangdong to Hanoi, the devastation of Ragasa has barely subsided. And yet, Bualoi has already ensured that the recovery will be longer, harder, and far more painful. And that's all we have for you on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Firstpost.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.